In our headlines on this Tuesday afternoon, July 2nd, here on the peninsula. A car crashes into a crowd of pedestrians in central Seoul Monday evening, killing 9 and injuring 4. The cause of the crash is under investigation. And North Korea claims it successfully tested a new type of tactical ballistic missile carrying a mock warhead. The claim was carried by its state-run media. Meanwhile, South Korea's consumer price index accelerates 2.4% on year in June, the slowest pace in almost a year, despite high costs of fruits and crude oil. A heavy rain advisory is in place here in the Greater Seoul area as well as in the country's southern region. The Interior and Safety Ministry has also activated Level 1 of operations at the Central Disaster and Safety Countermeasures Headquarters and raised the warning level to caution. Weather authorities say between 80 and 120 millimeters of rain will pound the central and southern parts of the country until tomorrow. Now, given the start of the monsoon season here, the ministry has called for public caution against flash floods as well as landslides and pledged prompt assistance to residents in vulnerable areas. Also, on the local front, there was a shocking traffic accident here in capital Seoul Monday evening. A car rammed into a group of pedestrians, killing 9 and injuring 4. Our Lee Seung-jae reports.
A devastating scene in downtown Seoul on Monday night when a car drove into a group of pedestrians waiting at a crosswalk. Police say 9 people were killed and 4 others were injured in the accident near Seoul City Hall at around 9:27 p.m. The driver, a 68-year-old man, is blaming sudden unintended acceleration for the accident. However, a witness at the scene is saying otherwise.
마지막에 맑은 거예요. 저기 앞에서. 다치고 나서, 걸치고 나서. 그 앞에서. 급발진 차량은 사고가 찰 때 알잖아요. 전봇대라도 박아야 되잖아요. 그거 없었어. 그냥 거기서 딱 멈췄어.
Another expert said that the driver did not try to avoid the pedestrians, as you would in case of a sudden acceleration, adding that the deadly accident could have simply been caused by a mistake or carelessness. The vehicle was also seen driving in the wrong direction and collided with 2 vehicles before hitting people. Police who apprehended the driver said he was not under the influence of alcohol. Investigators are not fully ruling out the possibility of issues within the car, considering the speed, reportedly 100 kilometers per hour, involved. Police say they will swiftly carry out the investigation based on statements from the driver and witnesses, CCTV and security camera analysis. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, in other news, North Korea says it successfully test-fired a new type of tactical ballistic missile carrying a mock warhead on Monday. Our correspondent Bae Eun-ji has details.
A day after its latest missile launch, North Korea has claimed that it successfully tested a new type of tactical ballistic missile, carrying a 4.5-ton super-large warhead. This is the first time that the North has said it tested such a missile. The North state-run media said Tuesday that the test of the new missile, named Hwasongpo 11Ta 4.5, was conducted with a mock warhead, aimed at verifying flight stability and accuracy, to see if it can fly a maximum range of 500 kilometers and minimum range of 90 kilometers. It added that the regime will carry out another test launch of the same type of missile this month to test the accuracy and the explosion power of the super-large warhead. South Korea's military detected 2 ballistic missiles fired by North Korea early on Monday. One was launched at around 5:05 a.m. and the next at 10 minutes later, both fired from the Changyeon area of the North's Hwanghae-namdo province. The first one, presumed to be a short-range ballistic missile, flew around 600 kilometers before landing in the sea. This was followed by a second missile that only traveled around 120 kilometers. The military said the second launch appears to have been unsuccessful and said the debris could have landed near the North's capital area. It assumed that both missiles could have been the Hwasong-11 short-range ballistic missiles, which were also test-launched from the Changyeon area last year, but did not completely rule out the possibility of a test launch of a new type of missile. Meanwhile, a plenary meeting of North Korea's ruling party took place for 4 days in Pyongyang until Monday, focusing on the economic situation. State media said Tuesday that Kim Jong-un assessed the regime's economy in the first half of this year has improved compared to the same period last year, and that crops across the regime's farmlands are also doing well. What's notable about the latest plenary meeting was that North Korean officials were seen wearing a pin with an image of Kim Jong-un for the first time, as part of the regime's latest efforts to strengthen the power of its third-generation leader. 배은지, Arirang News.
President Yoon has called for rational dialogue and compromise for the sake of improving people's livelihoods and careers prospects. The remarks come in light of the 3-day interpellation at the National Assembly on government policies. Addressing members of his cabinet earlier on this Tuesday, President Yoon also pointed out that while the Korean economy appears to be in a positive path to growth, the lives of ordinary Koreans remain vulnerable to a number of grave concerns, including a dismal birth rate amid a rapidly aging society. He went on to add that social polarization and generational clashes, that is, were doing little to brighten Korea's future. With regard to party clashes at the parliament, President Yoon urged for consensus, keeping in mind that lawmakers and government authorities share the common goal of seeking to enhance public livelihood. And in related news, the National Assembly on this Tuesday afternoon begins its interpellation of the Yoon administration's policies. Now today, the Q&A session focuses on politics, diplomacy and security. Much attention is expected to be centered on the government's response to North Korea's latest provocations, including the latter's floating of waste-carrying balloons into South Korea. Tomorrow, that is Wednesday, the session will touch upon the economy. And on the last day, that is Thursday, social issues including education will be addressed. Just 6 months after taking office, the head of the country's broadcasting regulator has tendered his resignation. Now, his move comes amid a vote led by the opposition-controlled parliament to impeach him. Kim Hong-il, the chairman of the Korea Communications Commission, claimed he was stepping down to allow for a successor to promptly continue his duties, as an impeachment could mean a vacant post for at least several months. According to the top office earlier this morning, President Yoon has accepted Kim's resignation. Korea's consumer price index accelerated 2.4% on-year in June, the slowest pace, that is, in almost a year, despite the high costs of fresh produce and petroleum. Our correspondent Moon Hae-ryun reports.
Inflation in South Korea is showing signs of stabilizing in the 2% range despite continued high prices for fruit. Data from Statistics Korea on Tuesday shows that the country's consumer price index, a key gauge of inflation, rose by 2.4% in June compared to the same month the year before. This is the lowest figure seen in 11 months, inching closer to the target inflation at 2%. The rise in consumer prices hovered above 3% at the start of the year before dropping below the 3% mark in April and remaining in the 2% range for 3 consecutive months. Core inflation excluding volatile food and energy prices came to 2.2%, while the index measuring 144 daily necessities rose by 2.8%. Prices for fresh produce drove these figures, with the cost of fresh fruit rising by more than 31% on year. Apple prices jumped over 63%, while the cost of pears more than doubled. Petroleum prices also showed the largest hike in a year and a half, surging by 4.3%, with a spokesperson from Statistics Korea claiming that this was due to the base effect of petroleum prices being low this time last year. Speaking at a meeting to discuss these latest figures, the first Vice Minister of Economy and Finance said that this falls in line with earlier predictions from the government for prices stabilizing in the mid-2% range in the second half of the year. Meanwhile, the Agriculture Ministry pledged to stabilize the supply and demand of vegetables vulnerable to summer rain and heat, as well as preemptively managing potential risks such as diseases affecting fruit trees. Starting yesterday, the government applied a new tariff quota to 7 different types of food ingredients such as coffee concentrate, as well as extending the lower tariffs on 28 types of fruit until the end of September. It will also strengthen inspections on the oil market after the partial return of taxes that scaled back the fuel tax cut on gasoline from 25% to 20%. Moon Hae-ryun, Arirang News.
Seoul's Unification Ministry has released records of inter-Korean dialogue during the 1980s when power shifted from Kim Il-sung to Kim Jong-il. Now, this is the 5th release of such records, with the first public disclosure taking place in the year 2022. The ministry explained that releasing the records is aimed at meeting the public's right to information and enhancing the transparency of policies regarding North Korea. The ministry claims the 1980s records show active interactions between the two Koreas that even paved the path to the first cross-border family reunions in the year 1985. The two Koreas held their first talks in the early 1970s. Elsewhere, Israel's military has ordered the evacuation of areas to the east of Gaza's second-largest city, Khan Younis, on Monday night local time. The order was made after some 20 rockets were fired into Israel by the Palestinian militant group Islamic Jihad from the city. Pundits believe the call for evacuation indicates a fresh ground offensive by Israel into Khan Younis. The call covers the area around the city's European hospital, as well as temporary tent shelters for the displaced. On a light note now, eco-friendly villages are looking to advance sustainable tourism practices in the Asia-Pacific region, and my colleague Lee Sujin sheds light on such green destinations over in the Philippines as well as here in South Korea. Do take a look.
It's that time of the year when the urge to travel goes up with the temperature. But now more travelers are looking for ways to help the planet when they go on vacation. And that's why leaders in the political world and tourism sector met in Cebu on Friday to discuss how to meet the demand for sustainable tourism at the 36th joint meeting of the UN Tourism Commission for East Asia and the Pacific.
We must go green in the transformation of our tourism products. I am of the belief that the greener you are, the better the tourism experience will be.
And one way countries in the Asia-Pacific region offer sustainable tourism is through eco-friendly villages.
One such eco-friendly village here in the Philippines is Boho, which is named one of UN Tourism's best tourism villages in 2021 for its commitment to sustainability and promoting local communities.
Tourists can travel down the Boho River, which spans 1.4 kilometers, in eco-friendly wooden boats where they're surrounded by mangrove trees and sounds of more than 60 bird species. And these sustainable practices have also reached the local population, as the traditional dance performances for those who visit Boho have created jobs. At another eco-friendly village where the Boho River enters the ocean, locals weave fiber ropes from the husks of coconuts to create biodegradable tents. There are also cooking demonstrations, keeping the village's traditions alive through food. Tours of eco-friendly villages are also available at 2 villages on South Korea's Jeju Island that were recognized as best tourism villages last year. Sewa Village keeps its local traditions alive by allowing tourists to experience the Haenyeo culture. And this also provides a chance for the female divers to make extra income. Dongbek Village promotes local products made with camellias, from which the village got its name, to produce oil that is used to create various local dishes. And these tour options have wide-reaching positive effects.
It is a huge contributor to the balance of payments, to income, and we see that through many programs that we have ourselves, like Tourism for Rural Development, where we have a lot of villages in Korea as well.
She added that to keep the momentum of eco-friendly bilateral tourism going, countries will need to work together to ease visa regulations and increase air capacity. Lee Sujin, Arirang News, Cebu.
In our latest interview segment, one of the world's most accomplished economists has called on South Korea to avoid policies that seek to prevent inevitable market developments and to focus instead on economic flexibility and the fostering of its immigrant workforce. Our Park Won-woo has more.
South Korea has seen on-year increases in exports for 9 consecutive months, leading to rosy economic prospects for trade. Despite a positive outlook, pundits point out difficulties that could distract the country from seeing further positive results. I sat down with Professor Ann Kruger, the former First Deputy Managing Director of the IMF, to get her take.
Korea is in a difficult situation because of the trade war between the U.S. and China, no doubt about that. I think Korea is in difficulty because obviously there's some things where the Americans are concerned about the military secrets, some of which could be important, and they don't want any of that to go to the Chinese too easily too soon. And if there are some of those components, then there will be some troubles without doubt, because right now the U.S. is pushing that very strongly.
She provided more detail on how South Korea should react to such uncertainties.
There are a lot of uncertainties with regard to world trade that Korea, like anybody else, is subject to. Only because Korea is more dependent on trade, it may be more important here to do it. The only problem is that all you can do about it is make sure that the domestic economy is healthy, to make sure that it's flexible, and to make sure that the markets can adjust as they need to, and not try to regulate and prevent things from happening, because fighting markets is not a formula for success ever.
She also spoke about the need for policies to allow more immigrants to come to Korea to improve economic growth.
Korea has not allowed very many immigrants. The countries that have are doing better. One of the reasons the U.S. economy is doing so well is we still have the immigrants in, and it may very well be that Korea wishes to change at least somewhat immigration policy and bring in more foreigners with either the skills or just the jobs that need to be filling.
The professor was in Seoul last week for the Seoul International Finance Conference, where she took part as a keynote speaker and addressed South Korea's significance in the region. How important is Korea in the global economy as Asia's financial hub?
Seoul is already a financial center for Korea. Korea's economy is healthy. I think there would have to be some opening up even more of the capital account and a few other things, but on the whole, if those things are done, I think the likelihood that things can work out very favorably is very good.
Park Won-woo, Arirang News.
Let's take a look at the latest news in the world now. We begin today in the US, where the Supreme Court has said that Donald Trump and other former presidents are partially immune from prosecution in Monday's landmark ruling recognizing presidential immunity for the first time. The U.S. Supreme Court justices ruled 6-3 on Monday, saying that former President Donald Trump cannot be prosecuted for any official acts that were within his constitutional rights as the incumbent president. He can still face charges for private, unofficial acts committed. The 3 liberal members who voted against immunity for official acts said they, quote, fear for our democracy. Justice Sonia Sotomayor added a warning that the president is now a king above the law. The ruling will have a huge impact on the federal criminal case against Trump on charges of attempting to overturn the 2020 election. Airplane manufacturer Boeing is set to face criminal charges over fraud related to 2 fatal crashes of its 737 MAX jets. The U.S. Justice Department will criminally charge Boeing and offer the plane maker a plea deal that includes a financial penalty of some $500 million and independent audits for safety and compliance practices under 3 years of probation. Last month, U.S. prosecutors suggested for the Department of Justice to bring criminal charges against Boeing for violating a 2021 settlement covering 2 crashes in 2018 and 2019 that killed 346 people. Both crashes were reportedly linked to faulty flight control systems, and part of the 2021 deal involved creating a compliance system related to these safety aspects. However, in May, the Justice Department found that Boeing failed to do so, stating a breach of the deal. Boeing will reportedly have until the end of the week to plead guilty or face a trial. A fearsome Category 4 storm hit islands in the Caribbean on Monday, bringing catastrophic winds, life-threatening storm surges, and intense rainfall. Hurricane Beryl made landfall on Grenada's Carriacou Island on Monday morning with speeds of up to around 240 kilometers per hour. Grenada Prime Minister Dickon Mitchell, in a news briefing, spoke of widespread reports of destruction and devastation, adding that Carriacou was flattened in 30 minutes. While communications are mostly down, there are no immediate reports of deaths or injuries on the island. While a hurricane watch has been announced for Jamaica, a tropical storm warning is in place for the Windward Islands and the southern coast of Haiti. Hurricane Beryl reportedly strengthened from a tropical depression to a major hurricane in some 42 hours. It is also the earliest Category 4 Atlantic hurricane on record. A Chinese space rocket under development accidentally launched during a test before falling and crashing into the ground. Beijing Tianbing Technology Company, also known as Space Pioneer, said on Sunday that its Tianlong-3 rocket under development detached itself from the launch pad during a test on Sunday due to a structural failure. It then fell and crashed into a mountain 1.5 kilometers southwest of the test site in Gongyi City, in central China's Henan province. No casualties were reported. Footage shows that the rocket slowly launched before it appears to lose power, crashing down to the ground and exploding. The Tianlong-3 has been developed with the intention of being a reusable rocket. Kim Xiang, Arirang News.
Good afternoon. Monsoon rain pours down today. The government also raised the heavy rain crisis alert level for the country from attention to caution. And until tomorrow morning, the upper parts of Gyeonggi-do and Gangwon-do could see more than 120 millimeters. Seoul and surrounding areas could see up to 100 millimeters of downpours. So a heavy rain advisory has been issued in central parts of the country, but more regions could be under a rain advisory later in the day, along with a wind advisory. Jeju Island will be free from rain, but it will be quite windy today. Along with sunshine, the island should have a high of 33 degrees Celsius this afternoon. Rain lets up early in Gwangju and heat sets in at 31 degrees Celsius. But heat takes a break with rain in central regions topping out at 25 degrees here in Seoul and Chuncheon. The rain lets up tomorrow morning, then another band of monsoon rain is in the forecast for later this week and into the weekend. With that in mind, let's take a look at the international weather conditions.
Right, and that ends our Tuesday afternoon newscast. Coming up right after this break is our daily panel session, and today we touch upon Korea's ties with Vietnam. Do stay with us. Thank you for now.